Welcome to this brief presentation on how to design quality PowerPoint slides. This is meant primarily for Transformational Leadership, Min 530, and in Module 3 there's an assignment there on presenting a high-quality PowerPoint presentation from Cotter's model, I believe. But this can benefit you in any context when you want to put together a dynamic, impactful PowerPoint presentation or keynote presentation or whatever your platform might be. I want to share with you some principles on how to design great quality slides and also couple that with a strong presentation that's concise and powerful and cogent. And so in this presentation I'll give you some examples of what not to do and some examples of what to do, and then at the end a couple of specifics on how to use PowerPoint to record your narration and your timing so that you can submit that finished assignment. Okay, what I'm giving you here is a brief example, a couple of examples of some bad slides. This is what you don't want to do in a PowerPoint presentation. So as you can see here, there's a lot of text on the screen, there's a lot of information, and as I'm talking, it's really difficult for you to read what's on the screen and then also process what I'm saying to you. So what you want to avoid in doing your PowerPoints is this, what we call death by PowerPoint, because this is just way too much information and it's really hard for the observer or the audience to track with your point. Here's another example. There's way too much text on the slide, and either you're listening to what I'm saying and not reading, or you're reading and listening to what I'm saying, or maybe I guess I could read through the text itself and say, is the Spirit a distinct person rather than simply the power or force of God at work in the world? But that's kind of insulting your intelligence, because I know you know how to read, and so I could just give you this in PowerPoint form and you could read it yourself rather than listen to me read it for you, reading it aloud. So what we want to do is get past this kind of approach to PowerPoint. Another example, again, way too much text on the screen. What we want to do is be able to communicate our point substantively, but also in an impactful way, maybe one that's a little bit more emotionally compelling, that's interesting to our audience, and so in that way it's more persuasive. I got this idea for PowerPoint presentations from a book on speech and presentations called Presentation Zen, and in that presentation book it talks about this presentation style of pachakasha, which is a Japanese presentation style originated in Tokyo, Japan a number of years ago. And the idea is that you would present 20 slides in 20 seconds each. And what that does is it forces you to really get to the point very quickly in each of your slides. And in many respects, that's what you're doing in this assignment. You're trying to communicate a lot of information, but to distill it down into its essence so that what you have to say is both compelling, but it's not an overload of information. Here's an example of using text on a screen in a way that is more emotionally compelling and communicates better. A good rule of thumb is to have no more than 7 words of text on your slide. 7 words of text, and that's something that allows the reader to process what they see, or the observer, or the listener. It allows your audience to process what you want to say without the information becoming overwhelming. So here's the elements of story: setting, character, conflict, climax, resolution. And you can process that really in a couple of seconds or less, and then you can also listen to what I'm saying. So the verbal presentation and the visual presentation work together as long as I don't have too much text on the screen. Here's an example of a lot of images on the screen, and yet our eye can process them really fast. And I've included a bunch of different images because different images resonate in ways with people that others don't. And so I'm trying to hit a really broad audience here in terms of favorite movies. And I can do that visually, and your eye can run over those images and really process information almost instantaneously, and then I can talk to you about what's your favorite movie, or I can say what's your favorite hero or character in a story, and you can continue to process with me in my presentation without becoming overwhelmed at the information. So I'm making a connection with you as the audience. Here's an example where I've combined an emotional image from a stage production of Les Mis together with some text. And again, I've arranged my text in such a way that it doesn't obscure the picture and there's still the energy and motion of the picture, but I've used text to communicate an idea of shared meaning. Here's an example of me breaking the rule of too much text on a slide. In this case, I might use more than 7 words on a slide, but I've got some specific questions that people will zero in on. And in keeping the number of lines of text from becoming overwhelming, I've allowed some possible connections again with my audience. Here's an example of one use of a word, and you'll find tons of these when you go to start searching the internet for different images that you can use. Tons of very creative artistic productions of different words. Also Bible verses and Bible passages work this way. People have done a ton of work to make references to passages of Scripture presented in a really compelling, interesting way. So a lot of times you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Those texts and images are out there. Okay, now I want to say a little bit about how to put these kinds of images together. Here's a spectrum, a light spectrum, and what I did is I found the image of the light spectrum, and I wanted to communicate a spectrum of Bible translations from very, very literal in the NASB to very, very paraphrased in the Message Bible. And so in using that idea of a spectrum, I can communicate a spectrum of interpretation. So you see how my choice of an image goes together with the message that I want to convey. Here's another example. I'm referring to Hebrews chapter 4 that says the Word of God is sharper than any two-edged sword. Now, we don't have a lot of swords in our day, so it's not as compelling to us, but we are familiar with the idea of sharpness. And so what I've done is I found the sharpest image of a sharp blade that I could find, and then used that as my reference to Hebrews chapter 4. Again, we want to go for emotionally compelling images. All right, so we've got Bill Murray here. He's lost in translation, lost in Tokyo, and he looks lost, doesn't he? So I'm communicating with a minimal amount of text with an emotionally compelling image, and I'm doing it in a way that really supports what I want to communicate in that slide. Here's another example. Here's a one-word slide where I wanted to talk about marriage and the commitment that a husband and wife make to one another in their marriage vows. And I love this word fidelity. And I wanted to choose an image that really matched the concept of fidelity and faithfulness to one another. So I'll use that word, but it also is positioned with an image that really communicates what I want to say. Another one for vision. Really seeing what's before us. Right. Oh boy, Grace Bible College website. Now this is an older version of the Grace Bible College website, but now that we've looked at some good quality visual presentations, we can see very quickly, can't we, that this is way too overwhelming, way too much information. I look at this webpage and I think, oh my goodness, where do I start? So we could say that this is a presentation that needs to be simplified. Simplified like a Japanese garden. Again, coming back to that idea of an elegance and a simplicity and a beauty in the things that are most elemental or most basic. Think of a bento box for you sushi fans who are out there. The idea that your sushi and your meat and your vegetables and your sauces are all arranged in such a precise and beautiful way. There's something elegant and appealing just about the presentation of the bento box that's simple and straightforward and yet has a beauty to it. That's what you should aim for in your own PowerPoint presentations. Communicate the information, but do it in a simple and an elegant way. One thing that you can do when choosing images is use what design theorists call the rule of thirds. And in putting together the rule of thirds, you divide your screen or your white page into thirds in both directions, and it works diagonally too. But what you want to do is fill 2/3 of that space with your image or your text, what's really important to you, and then leave the other third as what we call negative space, So here's an example of that. Now here's the baby, wrapped in a cushy, cozy blanket. I think it's like truffula flower or something like that from Dr. Seuss. But I've got 2/3 of my image filled with baby and soft, cozy blanket, and I could use that other third as negative space. I could leave it blank, or I could put some text in there that might communicate my point. If you can get your slides simplified, that's going to be the most powerful thing you can do to come up with a clear and elegant presentation. Here's a favorite of mine from Karl Barth. I might break my rule of having 7 words on a slide if I'm going to use an important quote from an author that I want to highlight. And so here this captures the flashes of lightning that Barth directs to some of his opponents. But here's an image that captures the emotion of what wants to be communicated, but also visually leaves space for me to put the amount of text into the presentation that we want to see there. All right, there's always hope for great PowerPoint presentations, and in the next couple of slides I want to show you how to put these elements together into a great presentation for this assignment. Okay, if on your PowerPoint presentation you click on Slideshow and click the circled box that you see there, Record Slideshow, that'll give you a drop-down menu, and you can either start recording your slideshow from the beginning, or you can record it from a current slide and just go slide by slide. Don't panic. Excuse me, don't panic when that immediately starts to record, because you can pause, you can repeat, you can redo each slide as it narrates, and so don't feel pressure to get it right exactly the first time. Instead, have a little script written out so that you can plan what you want to say on each one of those slides. Each slide, as I recall, should be about 30 seconds long, and you're aiming for about a 10-minute presentation. Understandable if you can't get it done in that what seems like too short an amount of time. That time limit is meant to be a constraint upon you to communicate only what's most essential, and to be creative in doing that. So record slideshow, and then record either from the beginning or from the current slide. If you record from the beginning, you'll be able to use the down key or the space bar or click to advance your slide, and then that will actually just advance to the next slide, and you can start recording from there. Okay, you can see here that PowerPoint is now showing me some of the slides that I've recorded narrations for, and I'm actually showing you the same presentation that I just gave you as I've been developing it. So you can see that each slide has its own narration, and this is helpful because I can zoom in on particular slides that I might want to redo. Say I coughed, or I got my notes scrambled, or I felt like I could have made my point a little more clearly or a little more concisely. I can go into each slide, re-record each slide, and then in that way improve different aspects of my presentation. Don't feel pressure that you have to get this right the first time. Most of us won't. Even with this presentation, I've had to go back and redo a number of slides in order to get things just right. So especially as you're just starting out putting presentations together, don't worry at all about getting it precisely right the first time. Another thing that you'll want to do is save your work as you go in case PowerPoint crashes or your computer crashes or you get called away and the 4-year-old comes and shuts your computer. Just be mindful that you don't want to lose your work when you're putting in a lot of time to a presentation like this. That about sums up the basics for what I want to say regarding designing quality PowerPoint slideshows and presentations. As you put your assignment together, remember that you're aiming for a presentation of 10 minutes maximum, but if you go over than that, that's understandable because 30 seconds a slide is a lot to try to pack quality information into. Remember, you want to have those scripts written out. You want to follow the instructions carefully in your assignment so that your slideshow is really well developed before you go to record these narrations and these timings. So to do that, you have the instructions on the previous slides. You can go back and check those out. I'm going to export this as a video so you can watch it right in the context of your assignment. For you, you should be able to, if you use the recording of narrations step that I showed you on the previous slides, you should be able to just save your PowerPoint presentation and submit it, and your professor will be able to download and read or listen to that presentation within Blackboard. So if you follow the instructions that are here, there's no need to export or make a movie or anything like that. Should be able to just save your PowerPoint file, and your professor can view that at their leisure. So thanks for your attention, and I hope this was helpful for you.